I want to introduce Lakisha Young. She's the co-founder and executive director of the Oakland REACH, a parent-run organization founded in 2016 with the mission, make the powerless parent powerful. She has dedicated her career to promoting access to quality schools because she knows firsthand that a good education changes lives. The Oakland REACH has conducted over 5,000 one-on-ones with parents in Oakland's most underserved communities to create a team of informed, organized parent advocates fighting for quality schools. In March 2019, the Oakland REACH had a significant policy win, the Opportunity Ticket, which gives the most vulnerable students higher preference for enrolling in quality schools. Building off that successful passage in 2019, the Oakland REACH doubled down on its commitment to opportunity with the launch of a new campaign, Literacy for All. This is a one-of-a-kind campaign led by the parents most impacted by failing schools and goes beyond focusing on early literacy outcomes and targets increasing literacy of the whole family, including the mamas and the grandmamas. Lakisha is a respected national voice on parent advocacy and regularly consults with other cities across the country interested in exploring parent advocacy to demand for better access to quality education for underserved students. We are so thankful to have Lakisha here. Education in Oakland has always been a mission for Oakland Uptown Rotary, and we are very much excited to have her. The work that they're doing, reaching out to these schools, is much in line with some of the work we've done. We also have recently partnered with Think College Now and are providing internet to multiple families there that have been without over the summer. So this is a near and dear topic for us, and we're very much excited again to hear all about the work that Lakisha is doing. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Lakisha.
Oh, good evening, everyone. First, I just want to say I am really honored to just be on this call with you guys and just to get to share a little bit about myself and a little bit about the work that we're doing in Oakland. And, you know, I think from the moment I jumped on, I really felt just like an ease. And that's always great at almost 6 o'clock after a long day. So thank you. So what I'm hoping to do today is kind of, like I said, tell you a little bit about me, share a little bit at a high level about us at the Oakland REACH. Like I said, I founded the Oakland REACH in 2016. I call myself the co-founder because the first cohort of parents that I recruited for our first fellowship, many of those folks have gone on to be a part of our team. And so I call myself a co-founder and they are co-founders as well. I want to talk about our REACH Relief Fund, which was we have two sort of COVID responses, our REACH Relief Fund and our Family Hub. And then like to wrap up with just kind of like what our call to action would be for folks like you really looking to get involved and assist the work that we're doing. So, like I said, just a little bit about me. So I was born and raised in San Francisco. My family is from Jim Crow South. So my family's from like Mississippi, when I talk about South. And my grandmother only got a 9th grade education, and then she was pregnant with my mom at the age of 16 and dropped out of school. So my grandmother's dream for her kids were that they would all graduate from high school. They migrated to San Francisco when my mom was 10 and my mom graduated from high school. My mom, thank goodness, had bigger dreams for me and wanted me to graduate from college. And as a single mother, she spent a lot of time navigating the system before we knew about this thing called school choice, just to make sure that I was in the good schools so that I had the option of going to college. And so when I really think about this work, I really think about that so many of the families that we talk to, so many of the families that have gone through our fellowship, and even like my team, like everybody's trying to have more Lakishas, right? Maybe the first person in their family who's actually gonna go to college. I think what's so tricky about the situation that our families see themselves in is that their aspirations tend to be far from the realities. So if you have an aspiration for your child to go to college, but you're attending a school where only 10% of the kids are reading on grade level, you got a pretty far distance to getting to that goal. I know I put this on the slide and hopefully you guys read it, but I wanted to kind of give you guys that backdrop. I put this picture here because this was a big moment for us as the Oakland REACH. This was our first legislative policy win related to, it's called something called the opportunity ticket. And as you guys know, OUSD has always, to be honest with you, but is dealing with some major budget deficits and need to sort of consolidate and or merge schools. When this happens, it's our families that are most negatively impacted. So essentially what we built a campaign around was that our families who were impacted by any closures, mergers, or consolidations got a priority preference in the lottery for any school that they wanted. And that was a big deal because most times actions to correct injustices happen from grass tops, but this came from us. And we were able to build coalition with, I would say, more privileged white allied groups who lived in the neighborhoods and who had access to some of these schools that our families could get access to through this policy. So this was a big night for them. And I'm also showing this picture because you can see it a little bit, but on the right side of me is my oldest son. And then my daughter is actually standing behind me. And then on the left-hand side is my 10-year-old. And just a quick funny story, we had already agreed that they would come up there with me. It was a lot of people at the board meeting, as you can kind of see. It was my 10-year-old that was like, Mama, I'm rolling with you. If you going up there, I'm going up there. And literally I had to like ring. And then all of a sudden my 14-year-old's like, if he's going, I'm going. You know, he's the big brother, so he's got to make sure he can't be left behind. And then my teenage daughter, of course, reluctantly follows. So this was a big moment for our families. We actually got that policy passed unanimously on March 5th, 2019, and currently just in partnership with the district around implementation of that so that it happens in the spirit and fidelity that it was designed. So let's back up a little bit and talk about the Oakland REACH. Every time I look at this particular picture, I kind of like, I cannot believe how far we've come. This picture was our first kind of like press conference. And I mean, we were like, press conference? We're gonna try to do a press conference. And we didn't have any like media coverage because that day there was a huge fire. It was sometime in September of, I think, 2017. And there was like a fire in Oakland, and fire, flood, and blood always comes before parents advocating for their kids' education. But it was a great event, and we had like 100 plus parents and stuff out there. And it was just a great energy. And the person, the wonderful woman with the blue flower you see in her hair, we call her Mama Williams. She just had our oldest grandson graduate from high school. Mama Williams was born and raised in Oakland, went to Oakland schools, followed the Oakland pathway, and she graduated from McClymonds High School, and she was not able to read, and pretty much lived her whole life as sort of like functioning illiterate, and didn't want, and her children, because she could not read, ended up falling into some very challenging life circumstances, and she was and is raising her grandchildren. So Mama Williams is a prime example of like these issues in Oakland are not new. I mean, this woman is in her 60s and experienced that as a teenager. So let's talk some numbers a bit about, we believe, our impact. You know, Oakland REACH is created by parents and for parents, and like I always tell people, we only work for parents. We're not about district schools or charter schools. We're about quality schools, and we'll do whatever we need to do to make sure that our babies and other parents who will never get a chance to necessarily advocate at the level that we do, that they're done right by, you know? I'm a mom, so this is as personal to me as this is my sort of like passion or career in life. So as Dan shared earlier, we have had over 5,000 one-on-ones with parents in Oakland's lowest performing schools. That is no small feat. I think we have been in every corner of Oakland talking to the families most impacted by failing schools. And I will tell you, it doesn't matter the circumstances of any of those families, they all aspire for their children or their grandchildren to walk a different path or to have a different outcome. It just lets you know that universally, it doesn't matter the station in life that you were born into, you can still dream and want something bigger for your children. But oftentimes in our communities, our families just don't have the tool to move from where they are to where they want to be. One of the cornerstones of the Oakland REACH is our family fellowship. We call it the Oakland Family Advocacy Fellowship. And that fellowship is really designed to help parents join the conversation about what's happening in Oakland so that they can actually be system advocates and demand better for the system. You know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease is what they say. And so when our families are not at the table, then unfortunately, even though we represent 70% of the school district, our voices are not heard. So our first cohort of parents that went through our fellowship was in December 1st, 2016. And since then, we've had closer to 400 parents. And I think that number of 43 is probably much larger of district and charter school parents. But during that fellowship, our parents learned everything about the history of Oakland education, how to use data, right? How to look at data to become better advocates for their kids. They learned about school choice. They learned about how to organize. They'll even learn about the budget. They learn about so much at a systems level. And what we see is like one of the great sort of unintended consequences is that they become just much better advocates at the school level as well. We've seen our families go on to join their school site councils or even lead them and just really feel like they now have agency. We also provide a stipend for our families, and we've provided with our partnership with Tech Exchange that we've had for, so this is, we were in the middle of our 10th cohort when COVID hit. So we've been working with Tech Exchange, I think, since cohort 3. So we've had a long, really great collaborative relationship with Tech Exchange. So we also set up a $200 voucher for our families to get computers, and then Tech Exchange partners with us around internet access. So computer and internet access has been critical to our work with parents from the very beginning. And then this piece around, typically when we come out and enforce for something we believe in as an organization, we've got everybody. And it is nothing for us to have 125, sometimes 150 parents out there really just wanting to be heard and fighting for their children. And then, like I shared before, we've had a huge policy win that really gives our families most impacted priority access over higher quality school options. And then the last thing I'll add that's not on this slide that Dan mentioned earlier is right before COVID hit, we had launched, and I'm not just saying this because I'm the executive director, but we had launched a pretty successful literacy campaign. So less than 30% of African American and Latino students are reading on grade level, but less than 50% of all Oakland students are reading on grade level. So although this pain cuts deeper for low-income families, it's just a systemic issue that's even impacting families with privilege. And so this Literacy for All campaign, we really saw as a campaign to really communicate that the whole family needs to be healed. The whole family needs to be supported. We can't just support, we should definitely support the younger kids. You get a lot of gains in literacy when you start with your children earlier, but let's talk about the Mama Williams who went through the system and never was taught to read. So what's been a blessing about the Literacy for All campaign in the hub is that with COVID hitting, we ended up transitioning and just sort of moving the Literacy for All work into the creation and design of the hub. So let's talk about COVID. I want to give a little quick background before we go into these couple videos. So the last day of school was Friday, March 13th. And at the time, I think most of us were told that we were going to kind of be out for at least like 3 weeks, maybe 4, okay? And I don't think anyone, whether you were a parent with kids in schools or you just citizen, whatever, no one expected for us to walk the journey we've had to walk with COVID. But as you know, families, low-income families are always hardest hit in scenarios like this. So on March 13th, our team of organizers, and just so you know, we have a team of 12, and our team of organizers got on the phone with their families and started to let them know, hey, school is going to be closed starting Monday, because school was not scheduled to be out for spring break for another like week. So school's going to be out, and, you know, catch the news, talk to your family, and then we'll follow up with you on Monday to kind of get a sense of what you guys are thinking. So we pulled together a survey. We're really big on data at the Oakland REACH. We use a lot of data to sort of drive the decisions, and that data just really comes from listening to our families. I always talk about we listen and then we build, right? And so on Monday, March 16th, we got on the phone with our families and we surveyed them. And so we asked them questions from something as simple as like, have you lost your job, or are you feeling like you're at risk of losing your job? You know, do you have a plan for your child, right? Like, are you working and don't have like babysitting or someone to watch your kids? Has anyone reached out to you? Has your child's school reached out to share with you how learning will continue at home? OUSD had launched a grab and go initiative that allow families to pick up meals and things of that nature. So we wanted to make sure that all families knew that and the location. And we also took that as a way to find out if there were some families we would just have to deliver meals to, because the access to the locations was just too daunting, whether physical issues and or transportation. And then it became really clear when we went into these conversations with our families. I think we first thought that we would sort of sorry, I just kind of like blanked for a second. When we first jumped into these conversations, I think we were prepared to support, and we were prepared to figure out ways to support financially. I think we were thinking more like gift cards so that people could buy groceries and things of that nature. Again, we were not prepared for like the magnitude of the need and what we heard when we talked to our families. So by the time we got to that Wednesday, so that would be March 18th, it was pretty clear that we needed to provide immediate cash assistance to our families. And it was on that day that the REACH Relief Fund was born. So I think at the time of this KTVU news coverage, we were in the first, week or two. Like I said, our first conversations with families was on March 16th, and we sent out our first payments on March 30th. I think we were either the first or one of the first Oakland organizations to get money to families, and we did it via checks. We did Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. We really tried to get money to people as fast as possible. I show this slide to sort of show you where this impact landed us. I sometimes am amazed because on Wednesday, March 18th, we were really hoping to raise like $25,000 or $50,000 so that we could just get money quickly to our families. We never expected to go beyond our base of families, which ended up being 1,019 families. We never expected to raise over, at this point we have raised over and we've given out over $325,000. And we've been able to do a round two of funds to at least about 700 or 800 of those families. So the impact of this relief fund was just, it was just huge. Just nothing that we could have imagined. But, I just think when you care, when you're urgent, when you understand and you move, it's amazing the things that you can do. But I will say this, because when I go back and when I watch the video, the news clip, which I haven't in a while, I was talking about pending stimulus money. So we gave out round two money, and we gave out the phase two money to the same families. So the same families got money twice, because the pool, getting to 1,000 families is huge. Those second conversations with families, so first those families were not expecting a second payment from us. We didn't promise one, but when we had extra money, and that's what we did. So they were pretty shocked to get more money from us. But I would say that the tears and the stress was much more palpable in those second conversations than they were in the first. I think the first, there was a lot more, there was anxiety and stress, And like, I got to put food in the refrigerator, but there was more hope around what the stimulus would do. I think people had applied for unemployment. But as we talk right now, there are people who are way backed up on the unemployment claims, are extremely backed up. And you watch it on the news, but you don't always get to appreciate how it impacts the family. It's impacting our families, like really significantly, not being able to tap into unemployment. Fatima is one of those families who I can imagine got on it, you know, applied for unemployment and got backed up. We had one parent that said that she's checked the portal. I don't know if she's counted and she said 65 times she's checked the portal to see if she can get any update on her claim. So I always share that because it's really, our parents are in tougher situation right now than they were in March as this COVID situation has settled in. But amidst all that, we have just felt really grateful that we've been put in a position and that we were able to pivot and support our families. So we kind of approach this as like thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and focusing on those essential needs with our families first. But while we were doing that, you know, our organizers are on the phones all day with their parents, checking in, providing resources, going to the resources, bringing them back to their families. So we were acutely aware that a lot of our families didn't have the internet and the computers, that the kids were not doing the learning, they had not connected with teachers and things of that nature. And so we knew we needed to figure something out about that, right? And so we figured, oh my God, our parents are sitting in the middle of this stress bubble, right? They're trying to put food in the refrigerator and they're trying to make sure their kids are learning. That's like too much for one person to take on. And the other kind of piece to this is, I always say, it's very expensive to be low income. We make low income families do a lot to get a little, right? And so we wanted to make sure that our longer term COVID response really was an integration of both the academic needs and aspirations of our families, along with the socioeconomic ones. The way we were experiencing it as a conduit to helping our families was just that it was a lot of this, right? And we had to kind of make it mesh versus integrated solutions. So it was just really a gap between the giver and folks in need. This is some pictures of families who we supported. And just as a background, the Oakland REACH is, has, our parent base is probably about 60% African-American and 40% Latino. So you'll see some intermixing of pictures there. That's really important to us. Obviously, Black and Latino students tend to struggle the most. And also Black and Latino communities tend to have tensions with each other. And it has been just core to our work that we bring the African-American and Latino community together by recognizing our differences in language and culture, but then also coming together around our similarities, around our aspirations for our kids, and just feeling like we're bit in a hamster wheel getting there. So we were still running our REACH Relief Fund, but we were in the lab creating the hub, right? Which we called the hub. So kind of like I want to talk, so the hub is our, what we call longer term COVID response. We see, we are launching phase 1 of the hub, but as soon as we have a little bit more information and as we get our phase 1 launch, we will be then going back into the lab to figure out what phase 2 looks like. I think before I talk about the hub, I want to sort of talk about some of the issues that already existed in Oakland education before COVID hit, just deepened, right, by this scenario. So at the time, and when I was going through this, I was like, wow, we have this thing with 30%, right? 30% is not okay. So like I shared before, less than 30% of Black and Brown Oakland students are reading on grade level. 30% of Oakland district schools, I think in 2018, and it hasn't improved by any measure, have been labeled as the lowest performing schools in California. So not in Oakland, but in California. My neighborhood school was on that list. And only about 30% of Oakland students participated in distance learning after COVID. And so you can imagine that many of those families, right, that were coming to pick up their computers are a part of that 70%. I always tell people the Oakland REACH would not need to exist if our kids were being served well and served equitably. We exist because there is just a systemic injustice around education that has been in this country forever, and we're just tired of it. And we're not going to take it anymore because we know that if our kids are one shot at our kids making it, you know, and sometimes I would just have to say this, I personally sometimes hold on to this too much because it was such a saving grace for me. It does not mean that my boys will not get shot dead in the street, but at least if I can get them an education, it can put them in spaces and circles and pathways that make that hopefully a lot less likely. So we fight with the tool that we know defies zip code and sometimes demographics, and that is education. And so what is the hub about? Our hashtag for the hub is Reach for More. We saw this as just devastating, shocking as COVID has been for all of us. Me, every one of you guys on the phone, right? Like for our families, it's also an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to revisit things that are not working because the structures and the systems that were holding them together now don't exist. And so you have a way to step back and say, we want these for our families. We want these for our kids. How do we use this situation to just take the lead to do what we need to do for our babies? And that's really what the hub is about. We are literally running a parallel institution alongside a system that's not working, that hasn't worked. And they has very well-meaning people. I like almost everybody that I interact with at the district. I love the superintendent. I just individually like a lot of people, but nothing gets done, okay? And it's our families that are hurt by it. So the hub is really about wanting more quality education than many of our children are receiving in the current school system. It's about us taking the lead in our children's education. I think the thing that a lot of people can't appreciate is that when you're low income, Black and brown, you don't get the same respect when you walk into school as a parent who is white and privileged, right? There are biases up the wazoo that come in from both ends, but obviously people at the school level have much more positional authority around your child's education. So our parents have often talked about feeling not welcomed or respected, as they have talked about, you know, their amazing experiences with their teachers. So the teacher is so critical to the role, but we just have so much inequity in terms of our families being brought to the table around their children's education. And then I talked to you about how this integrates. We need to make sure we're paying attention to the whole family. And that is not just the academic, but the socioeconomic needs. An example of that would be simply that a parent shouldn't have to decide to pay the light bill or get their child educated, right? We have to figure out how to support families so that they can do both. And then the other thing, I think we have a little bit of gap in this presentation. I apologize for that. We kind of doubled our team. You know, we hired teachers, and they are Oakland teachers. They are Oakland district and charter teachers who, you know, this is summer and they were looking for summer work, and we interviewed a bunch of folks, and these folks were like super excited about being a part of something innovative and courageous and really helping kids. There's so many teachers out here that just want to help students. So we have hired 14 teachers, and we now have 200 families enrolled in the hub. And as we speak, our K-2 group is going through reading assessments. We're doing reading assessments in what we call our Literacy Liberation Center. So then I want to talk about kind of like what's next for us, and then talk about you know, what our call to action is for people who really care about this work and want to support. So phase 1 of our hub launch is Monday. So we are working overtime to get that started. I think 3 times a day, I'm like, you got to be crazy. You're crazy. You're crazy, crazy, crazy. But this is the right, we have to do it. It's just not an option. So Monday, June 29th, 200 Oakland kids are going to be in a virtual hub. We're doing it. Okay. It's happening. Another thing is that we'll finish up our cohort 10 fellowship at some point this summer for our families. We find that the leadership development of our families is poor. We do not ask our parents to put on yellow shirts and show up to meetings. We actually spend time educating our families about the system and allowing them to be real learners and at the table. And then, as you guys know, elections are coming up, and it's typically our families that are either not registered to vote, not informed around voting. And so we want to do a lot more there to educate our families and put them in the best power position and position of agency going into November elections. So we will be, you know, looking at that, you know, starting on that strategy next month as well. So in thinking through, like, you know, for people who want to like join us and just stay involved, is we really need like equipment and money, right? So just as context, we gave out 200 computers last Tuesday. 100 of those were donated to us by Text Exchange, which is amazing, and Seth is amazing. And but then we had to purchase 100 laptops ourselves. And now we're about to buy 100 more laptops because we did not have enough. I think the thing I want to share is that I know some of you guys saw the news that Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey is giving $10 million to Oakland, which is amazing. The challenging part about that is that those computers will not hit Oakland until mid-August. And then between them hitting Oakland into mid-August and actually getting into the hands of families, you can do the math. So we don't feel like we can wait for that to get our families up and running. So we have fundraised money so that we're able to get our families the computers they need so they are not operating in this deficit. We've also partnered with T-Mobile to get 60 hotspots to the 60 families we have in the hub that do not have internet access. And we are committed to paying a year of their hotspot coverage so that they don't have to worry for 12 months about having internet access. So with that, and like paying teachers and everything, like we're running, I call it the hub, and some people are like, you're running a school. I'm like, we're running a hub with kind of a school in it. Money is always very helpful. The other thing is really like share with your networks. We really want to get the word out about what we're doing here. This is not just an Oakland problem. This is a, like, in every urban city, you're going to see the same challenges, the same issues. New York Times just came out with an article talking about how our families, right, are the ones falling behind during the COVID. So I think like the more that people know about a model like the hub, the more we have the potential for other cities to potentially adopt something like this too, that really puts the people who are most impacted by the issues at the head of the table to solve them. And then keep in check, like check in with us. You know, what we would love to do is like, as we get more data on how our kids are doing through the hub, especially through literacy, how they're improving, we're gonna try to host webinars on that and be very transparent about where we think it's going well, where we're struggling, understand from our parents how their experience has been. This is critical to us. We listen and we build. We listen and we create. And then if you know other partners that can support us or funders who could support our work, we would be extremely grateful. So that is sort of our call to action. And as we can continue our work in the coming months, we're gonna have much more call to actions. And so just definitely wanna stay connected with the Oakland Rotary Club.
Well, thank you very much. The group has quite a few questions for you. They kind of fall into two categories, more specific to some of the things that you mentioned in your stories of who you've been helping and how you've been helping, and then a couple of them more broadly about the organization. So let me start off with some of the more specific ones. And that is, well, first, what grade levels are you covering? And what's the age group that your instructors, your hub instructors, are trying to help?
So great question. Hold on, I want to try to expand my screen. So we will be serving K through 8. So kindergarten through 8th grade. And just as a little bit more context, the K through 8 is broken into 2 centers. The K through 2 will be a part of what we call our Literacy Liberation Center, the LLC. And then our 3rd through 8th graders are a part of something called a National Summer School Initiative that about 15,000 students across the country are a part of as well. And we've hired local teachers to lead instruction on this end. Our K through 2 families receive a $500 stipend for successfully participating in the phase 1 launch. And then our 3rd through 8 families will receive $250. And the reason why we are providing a larger stipend for K through 2 is because we're actually requiring parents to be online with their kids during class, because those babies are too young to be online by themselves. And we also think it creates a great opportunity for our parents with their younger kids to see instruction live and to provide feedback and just be critical partners early on.
Good. Well, thank you. So one of the questions was, given the numbers and the urgency, how do you determine who receives the funds or the computers? And what do they have to do to qualify?
Good question. So as I mentioned, like the Oakland REACH, we have our own base of parents who are our Oakland REACH parents. We've connected with these parents in various ways. They've been through our fellowship. They have helped design our campaigns or inform our campaigns. And so they are our base of parents. And when we started the Relief Fund, our Relief Fund was for our base of parents. So when we designed the hub, which was from directly listening to our parents, it was our parents who we went to first to obviously invite them to be a part of it. We have been fortunate to expand it to some extent to other families who are not in our base, but our priority always goes to our base of families.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Oh, and then I think you asked the last question about how do people get access? I think you said, how do they
qualify? The question was, how do they?
Yeah, there's really no, the qualification is really the commitment that like you will commit to Monday through Friday, right? 5 days a week, 3 hours a day of instruction, even on July 3rd, which is typically supposed to be a holiday. So I think the commitment is really around, the eligibility is around the commitment to participate fully. And we know things happen from here and there, but we need a family that can be a part of it.
Okay, thank you. Do you think that Dorsey's giveaway of the computers is going to actually get full coverage, or do you see that there's possibility for further holes? I mean, you mentioned internet access is one issue, but beyond that, after all that, it sounds like you solved the problem, but do you see that other holes are going to be created that need to be filled? And how do you, if so, how do you view filling those holes?
That's a good question. I think these are all good questions, so I'm gonna stop saying good question. So one, I think I'll start with like, I'm not really sure what kind of debt $10 million does for the problem that we have citywide. So I just want to name that. I'm not an expert there. I think that like, if I assumed that it had the ability to really fill some holes, I think where stuff starts to potentially fall apart are the agencies who have the money's ability to get them directly into the household, right? So I see the gaps, not so much of like, do we have enough money for supply, but do I have this parent's phone number? Like we have the phone numbers and addresses to families that not even the school district with the kids attending the schools actually has, right? So I think like, that's where we see the gaps happening. It's just that there could be 50 computers sitting over here, but 50 parents with no contact information for hotspots and or computers. Now, we don't see ourselves, we see ourselves as part of the solution, not the only solution. And so I say that to the extent that we have the relationships with a lot of families in our communities that are harder to get to, we are already starting to work with the districts and the CMOs to share, we're actually about to transition to share our rosters so that they can see which kids and families from which schools are enrolled in the hub and how many computers we've given them already. because we also don't want to be duplicitous in our efforts. We don't want to have some family that's gotten 10 computers and another family that hasn't even gotten one. So I would say that like right now, I don't know that I am as concerned with whether or not $10 million like fills the gap. I'm concerned about the assembly line and getting those computers and hotspots in the homes. And I would like to add this, Brad, I'm like more quadruple concerned about our kids actually learning once they get because you can get a computer, you can get a hotspot and be on Netflix all day, right? So it needs to be clear that a computer and hotspot does not equal learning. It equals a computer and hotspot. And it is a critical step to set up the conditions and the infrastructure. But the reason why we set up the hub is because the learning needs to happen. After our KTVU coverage, we had parents calling our office saying, I don't even need the computer. I just need the summer school. Like I need my kids learning. Like they haven't learned anything in 3 months, you know? So I just want to stress that like our families really, really care about that learning.
How are you going to measure that? How do you know that they've actually learned? I mean, I know you're going through the process and sounds like you've been able to think that through, but then how do you know that you're achieving your measurable goals that you're seeking?
So this is why so for the K through 2, we have already started the reading assessment so that we can assess where our kids are coming in at reading. So we'll have that data, and then we will run these assessments, I think, every 3 to 4 weeks so that we see our progress. So we are launching this with data around where our kids are at, and then we will be using our, there's a science behind reading, which is a whole other webinar. And so as we really implement that, we will then be testing our students. And that's the same that's going to happen in terms of the NSSI. Every morning, our kids have like a quick quiz, right? To test that they picked up the knowledge from the day before or did their homework. So I'm really glad you guys asked questions like these, because I honestly feel that there's really no good in us doing any of these things if we're not able to show over time better results for our students. That's what this is about.
Okay, well, building on that concept, knowing and clearly you understand the importance of educating the parents in this process. Is there computer literacy for the parents? Because a lot of these kids, I would imagine, have parents that are well-intended but are not able to supplement the learning process as may be needed in this distance learning environment.
Yeah, so let me talk through that a little bit, because it's kind of like computer literacy for our families is it needs to be a hybrid, and this is what we're doing, right? It needs to be a hybrid between one-on-one support along with like the ability to provide some workshops for families, especially around like technology needs that maybe we see consistently. So let me give an example. Right as we speak, we have organizers on the phone with their families, like basically like helping them turn their computer on, right? And helping them set up their email, right? And walking through instructions to set up and access their email. So when we think about computer literacy, it's a lot different than sometimes people think. It's sort of like, right now I feel like we're doing computer literacy right now, but that is like hand-holding, one-on-one, 45-minute calls to make sure that parents can power on computers and access email. And then we move to sort of the next bucket, which is helping parents click on Google links and come into Google meetings or to Zoom meetings. So what I like about the way we approach it is that we're not doing computer literacy as a separate piece. We're helping our parents build the skills that gives them better access. I think sometimes when we educate separate from saying, wow, if you learn this thing, you now have more access to these other things, I think really has the better lasting impact.
Gotcha. So shifting the conversation just slightly, what are the number of students and / families that need these online programs such as the Khan Academy, Brain POP during this time?
Oh, you're talking about in the system as a whole?
Well, you could talk about it specifically, but we're starting to now ask broader questions. So maybe if you see it
We
differently.
have live teachers, so we've hired teachers. So our teachers will be teaching classes live from 10 to 1 and 10 to 12:30, 9 to 12:30 every day. So there won't be any pre-recorded lessons or any of those things. So we're not accessing tools like Khan Academy. Khan Academy is not going to work with our families. I think later on down the line, when there is a greater sophistication around technology and around online learning, I think that there's so many great platforms out there like Khan Academy. I think there's an opportunity to implement it, but we are literally teaching like I'm talking to you right now, every single day until July 31st.
Got it. In the program, back to the opportunity policy that you were able to get across, has there been any statistics provided by Unified School District as to how well that worked? Are they dialogue with?
It is very new. So the policy was just won in March of 2019. So just so you know that the opportunity ticket moves with the decisions made at the systems level around any mergers or consolidations or closures. And I don't know if you guys have kind of stayed abreast. It can be kind of confusing and crazy. But there's only been, since the opportunity ticket, which happened after cohort 1, there's only been one other cohort that has popped up during the opportunity ticket, and that was 4 schools. And so the biggest sort of drama with that was that one of the schools, I don't know if you guys heard about Kaiser, being Kaiser Elementary, which is a school on the hill, but accessible in a lot of ways to families all over the city. And so a lot of families all over the city sort of enjoy this sort of type of education at Kaiser without necessarily having to live in that neighborhood. And so the district made a decision to move that school and merge it with Sankofa, which is a lower performing, 90% African-American, probably 90% free or reduced. And the whole district went into a crazy uproar when that happened, and parents. And so those families, so that was a little bit of, I would say, some political tension around the opportunity ticket, because essentially those Kaiser families could qualify for the opportunity ticket because their school was a school that was moving. So it's too early to give a good background on the opportunity ticket because we only had one cohort after, and then COVID hit. So any more decisions around mergers or closures or consolidations probably won't be made until the end of 2020.
Got it. So with a voice now on the Unified School District, where do you see this going forward? Where do you think Oakland REACH will integrate with the school district? Will it be as a community voice on behalf of your parents? Do you see that longer term that there's an integration that will occur that will help community outreach? I mean, or will you run a parallel organization so that you keep your eyes on the community more so than on the educational process of the Oakland Unified School District?
I think that we will always operate independently. We always partner. Partnership is the key. Coalition building is the key. When we launched a literacy campaign, we were able to get the superintendent to sign an MOU to commit to what we were putting in there. So partnership is key. But if you really want to change the system, you can't integrate with the system, I don't believe. I think you partner with the system, but I think where we have the most impact is by keeping our eyes and ears as close to our families as possible, and then bringing the system in and partnering along the way. I think integration, we go to die, and I don't want to use that word in the civil rights sense, but I don't think we will be merging our organization within OUSD. If anything, I will say this, Brad, and I've shared this with the superintendent, and I've shared this with superintendents across the country, which is, I don't believe that the school district is actually designed to do community engagement. And so community engagement and advocacy work should be left to organizations like ours, because the school system does not have they never staff these community engagement teams enough to actually make the impact that they need to make to serve. And community engagement is so key. So I think we will continue to partner, but make sure that we build solutions that are for our families. Now, this hub is very, very new. It was not something that if you asked me 3 months ago, we would be doing. And I would just say to you is that we're gonna take it where it needs to go. If our families are feeling like they're getting a lot and their kids are learning, I would be a very bad leader if I just turn the lights off and say, that was a fun experiment, now let's move on. So we will make sure that this hub exists in all the ways it needs to exist to support the families.
Okay, well then that leads to the next question. It's going to be in a couple of parts.
Yep.
One element is, okay, so where are you getting your money? How are you surviving? Because what you just described is you need resources, and you can have it in human capital, but you also need monetary capital. But beyond that, what do you see as your constraints for growth? How do you see yourself scaling? You've got the 200 families, but the need obviously is far greater. So what thoughts or ideas do you have of scaling this process? We don't know how long we're going to be in this hold pattern that we're in right now.
So I would say funding, we apply for grants through foundations, right? So a majority of so pre-COVID, all of our funding came through foundations, both local and both national. And we've also connected with a bunch more, with not a bunch more, but some other key foundations. So a majority of our funding is foundation funding. Right when COVID hit and we launched the relief fund, we didn't have at the time a large, we had a very small individual donor base because we didn't, we're just doing the work. And so we hadn't cultivated this individual donor base. But during the REACH Relief Fund, we went from having a handful of individual donors to 252 individual donors. And so what we've done is we've done a lot more and had a huge opportunity to cultivate individual donors who want to support and get involved in supporting our families. So that's been a great expansion of our base and our funding and just our diversity. When we talk about scale, I think we're already operating. Uh-oh. Did I lose you guys?
No, we're here.
Oh, sorry. I pressed the button and I thought all went bad. Okay. I already think that we operate at scale. So let me give you an example. I think we go smaller and bigger, smaller and bigger. I think we move between, I think we're always focused on system change. So when we run that policy, although we're at the very early stages of the policy, that policy has the potential to impact a few thousand students, right?
Lakisha, may I interrupt for a moment? We lost, there you are. Now we can see you. We were looking at your
sorry.
That's okay. Excuse me for interrupting you.
Yeah, no problem. So I kind of see that our work has always operated at scale. I think that we keep our focus on the system, right? And we train and we provide leadership development for our parents to become system advocates. But when you think about something like the opportunity ticket as a policy, it has the ability to impact thousands of students over a decade, right? So that's one way I would share scale. In terms of the hub, yeah, we're starting off with 200 families, but those 200 families have an opportunity to tell 5 more families a piece, and now we're at 1,000, right? So I think that if we create the solutions that really drive for families, the scale is always there. So I feel like we already operate at a scale, even if you see that we have 400 parents that have gone through a fellowship. Those 400 parents, or some of those numbers, became a part of this campaign that then allowed us to get this policy win that then is going to help impact a few thousand families or more over a longer period of time. So that's how we sort of operate. What you're seeing with the hub is you're coming in, which is really great, at the very early stages of it. But who knows where we're going to be 5 months from now? You know, one thing I will share with you is that here are my worries going into the new school year, okay? New school year is supposed to start on August the 10th. I'm concerned about a couple things happening that will impact our children's ability to get back on track. One is, I believe that parents are going to make a choice to not take their kids back to school for different health and safety reasons. We have children living in homes with like older relatives and siblings with family members with underlying conditions. So I can really see that. I also think that there's going to be some tension between the school district and potentially the teachers union, just around how the teachers go back to school. And those conversations and negotiations, they could delay things for, 3 weeks, a month, or whatnot. I think that there will be delays, and I think that there will be barriers. And when they are delays and there are barriers, they end up hurting our families. So we really see that we're going to take a break after the 31st, but I really see that we're going to have to continue the hub, right? We're going to continue it anyway, but I wonder how much at scale we're going to have to continue it when we have a bunch of families who really just cannot access fall learning. And I just want to add that the learning has not been that great. So it's not like we're accessing top-notch learning to begin with. So if we actually pull this off, and I'm going to do everything in my power, that's what you saw me try to not say on KTVU was damnedest. Did you guys catch that, where I had to like pull myself together? Woo! We're going to do everything we can, but if this thing works, and families hear about it, then we're going to have to scale it, and we're going to have to do more. That's just how it works. We don't really have an option. So we are going to need more money, and we are going to need more resources, and we'll have to fundraise. And so we have foundations that we can tap into. I will share that because we've also added a economic empowerment component to it, which just came naturally from COVID. That's opened up for different other foundations who are interested in our work. But we now have we're building an individual donor base, which excites me more than anything, because it's just like average people like me who are like, I think you're doing something important, here's $100. And that really adds up. So even with the Hub campaign, we have gotten an individual donor to do a matching of up to $15,000 for any individual donations leading up to that. So we've been able to not just go to foundations to ask for money. There's a lot of foundations that are doing emergency COVID response grants for organizations that come up with innovative solutions around this issue. But to have this person say, I'll match up to $15,000 has really been motivating for a lot of folks. They're like, oh, I give 100 and then 100 is matched. So right now we're probably at about 8,000 of that. And we've got a week to hit like another 7,000 or 2 weeks to get the match. But we're just excited to actually be making that happen. I hope I answered your question, Brad. I think I gave you more than you asked for.
You did, but thank you. You did answer two other questions we had here already. So you're focused on education, but you've also now created a community. So this question has an educational implication. Besides voting, are you encouraging your families to make sure that they participate in the census so that as many resources as possible will come into their community?
So we have, and it's tricky, okay? So we have, right before COVID hit, we were partnering with two organizations. I think it was the Alameda County Voter, something with, I forgot the name. We were partnering with them and making calls to our families around that. And here's the challenge. So one, the short answer is yes. The challenge is many of our Spanish-speaking families are concerned about immigration. And it's very hard, even when we're doing TV interviews, it's hard to get our Spanish-speaking families to participate. They're really concerned about how their personal lives will be, impacted by giving out any information. So I think there's just more work that we need to do there as we pivot towards the voting, but the trust is not there. So I think as you guys think about calls to action, if you guys have any ideas about how you build trust with communities whose livelihoods are on the line and have seen, you know, extended relatives and stuff, like literally shipped off, you know, like we're open. But we haven't been able to do a real deep dive on that as of yet, since COVID.
I appreciate that. So one final question for you before I kick this back to Dan. It's been asked a number of times. Given all that you're doing, do you sleep?
Last night I slept for 4 hours, and I do sleep, and when I do sleep, I sleep well. So that's the thing I will add, except for allergies. And I don't know if anybody on here gets beat down by allergies, but I'm someone that gets destroyed. I do sleep, but I literally wake up in the morning and my brain is like, we got to do it. Let's go. And I don't know. I just love it. I love it because I told somebody, I think I told Lee Romney at KALW radio that, like, if I gotta get up and work 14-hour days, so this is why we built the hub, I need to work towards something that's actually gonna get some results. I don't wanna spend 14 hours banging my head against systems and situations that actually needs to be dismantled and revisited. I wanna build and be a part of building things that really work for our families. And when you get the responses that you get, you're like, I'm doing the right work. So yes, I sleep well, but I don't sleep as many hours as I should. And I will be taking a vacation the first week in August, walking around the living room.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Like, this was awesome. You know, it's been a long day, but like I said, I just thank you for bringing me. I can talk about this stuff all day and all night, and I'm just glad that somebody wants to listen.
We actually, one of our other guests has been pinging me repeatedly with a very interesting question. I didn't want to butcher it, so I want to give Marissa ask this first before we open it fully up. So Lakisha, do you mind sticking around for just?
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, I think my question was answered. And regarding to like partnerships, I work with an organization called Project Access. And I don't know if any of your families are part of. So what we are is we're a nonprofit that is a center inside of low-income housing. And what we do is we try to provide services, obviously, to our youth. I mean, education's been a huge component, especially during COVID-19. If you hear background noise, I have triplets, so they're kind of like, that's why I'm hiding my camera. I'm still working, I'm hiding my camera. And obviously families and I have senior sites. So I cover Northern California. And when I originally had gotten the email and I was inquiring, I was really, really interested. I thought it was such a part of a partnership. We face some of the same issues, especially my site, Oakland. And that's why I asked the question about different programs, online platforms that your families were needing. So I wanted to know what else could be done or what else could we do to help those families. And if you were familiar with the location of your families, the different services that they would apply for that one, obviously would be of service to them that wouldn't cost anything.
I think I got that. There's a couple pieces. So I feel like one of the questions you asked, where were our families coming from, correct? In Oakland?
Yes.
Yeah, so the majority of our families come from West Oakland, Fruitvale, and Deep East. So like 607, 94607, 601, and 94621.
Okay.
We have families from all over Oakland because we're citywide, but that's our largest concentration of families. In terms of online platforms, I don't have the names of sort of the online platforms we're using in the hub, but I think what's important to note is that we are not providing sort of like independent, like, hey, you work on this independent. What we have found is like the more embedded and the more structure and the more live that we are with our families, the better the results are going to be for the kids, because there's a lot going on and there's a lot of distractions. So we're not really setting up something that's like And if you shoot me an email, I can
Okay.
kind of use some of the names of like some of the platforms we're using within the hub with the kids, but we're not using any sort of online platforms that are independent from allowing us to move instruction within the hub, if that's helpful. You asked another question related to getting access to resources and things like that. Can you ask that question again? Because you got a little muffled.
I'm sorry. Maybe because it's my first time. I'm just trying to understand and to see if there's anything that I could share based upon the resources that we have. Specifically, you said there's 200 families. I'm asking what specifically, other than, I know you said you have teachers that, you know, do live, you know, curriculum for the students. What are you specifically looking for, other than obviously, you know, donations? What else could, in passing, what else could we do, or could other organizations that I partner with do?
So for the hub, which is our focus right now, right? We're going to have something. So there's 3 components to the hub. 2 of them are academic centered, right? The third one, and if you have the one pager, take some time to kind of look it over. I put my email address in it because Marissa, we can have a conversation offline.
Thank you.
But we're launching something called the Family Sustainability Center. And so the Family Sustainability Center will focus on these other sort of resources and workshops for our families. So where we might go with something like that is that, depending on our conversation, there could be an opportunity for you to facilitate a workshop within the FSC for our families. We're trying to design the FSC to meet the socioeconomic needs. So an example is that next week we'll start doing intake assessments for the Family Sustainability Center, which will be powered through both Google Classroom as well as Zoom, okay? And if our parents say, I care about housing, my housing situation is so untenable or so uncertain, right now I'm in an email exchange with City of Oakland, right? To bring their housing team to come in and do a live workshop with our families around what are
rental
the
assistance, right?
So that is the place in the hub where, if you guys, and I'm glad that you brought this up, Marissa, I think once we get more data back from our families around what are the things that keep them up at night around sustaining their families, some of those questions, like we said, is like, is it transportation? Is it housing? Is it workforce development? Are you concerned about finding a job? Is it finances? Like, how do I manage my finances in this situation? We want to then bring the experts and solutions into the hub to provide that support. So I see a way for you guys, as we understand what our parents need. If you're like, oh, we know a great organization, because I'm trying to build that from the ground. This is kind of a new concept, and I don't have like a bunch of partner orgs like lined up yet. So that would be a great way. So I'm glad you brought that up, Marissa. That's important. We see the Family Sustainability Center as really key to helping our families holistically sustain and thrive.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, and Lakisha, I know that we've kept you a little bit longer than planned, but it sounded like
I'm totally
okay, because Lisa had a similar type question, and so I think I'll go ahead and let her go with that now. Lisa, can you unmute yourself?
There we go. Is that all right? I'm
Yes.
on now? Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you.
I have a collection of stories for a game I designed for kids who aren't literate yet. There's stories from Africa, there's stories from Native Americans and such. And it occurred to me as you were speaking that if there was a way that we could put them on YouTube through people who are storytellers, and I have friends who are professional storytellers, I wondered if that would be useful. It's geared toward elementary age.
Would you have any people who would be willing to come in the hub and read live?
Could be. I can ask.
Because I think that would, we don't plan during the hub to do a lot of pre-recorded stuff, but what we've talked about, because there is a reading time. And I think I think both solutions are really, really possible. I want to check in with our education side But Lisa, I think that that's really possible, both for the YouTube videos as well as if anyone's like got 30 minutes, 20 minutes and wants to like read. That's another option.
I can check. We'll figure it out. Yeah. I
And
have a
that's
different.
kind of for anybody on this call. I mean, again, I don't want to overcommit and stress out my director of the Literacy Liberation Center. He's gonna be like, oh my God. But I do believe that part of their day is, you know, is this like read aloud, right? And so I think having guest readers is pretty awesome.
Do they have to come there, or can it be arranged from their own home? Because the people I know are like in their 70s.
Oh no, this whole experience is online. So
Oh, good.
yeah,
I
yeah.
can ask and find out. I have a different question entirely. Where in Mississippi is your family from?
Edwards, Mississippi, which is the deep South outhouse. I think, yes, it's not close to Texas.
My husband's family's from Bay St. Louis, about an hour east of New Orleans.
Oh, okay.
And I just want to share with you that their city council just voted to take down the Mississippi flag.
Oh, that's awesome. I always say my mom was born the same year that Emmett Till was killed. So it's
Oh boy,
yes,
1955. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I'm totally open. So please shoot me an email. I really like that. Thank you.
Okay.
And Lakisha, going forward, because we are coming up on the end, Oakland Uptown has long had a history of supporting Think College Now, especially in the literacy front. So if anything you're needing that is more on the hours of service side of things, we do what we can financially. But you know, if you're looking for readers, if you're looking for people to you know, help you set up logistics, just moving things from one place to another, feel free to reach out to us at any time.
Awesome.
The organization you've got going is wonderful, and I'm so glad to have connected with you.
Me too.
Your time. One of our big things in Rotary has been the eradication of polio across the world. I think all of our speakers, we're donating in your name to the Polio Plus organization, because we are now down to only 2 countries in the world that still have an endemic polio. The number has dropped from over 300,000 a year, and I think this year, Brad would have to correct me, but I think it's 67 at the current juncture. So,
oh wow, that's an honor. That's awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so again, I hope this partnership is fruitful. We look forward to supporting you any way we can. And with that, I thank you all tonight, especially Lakisha. You spent a full hour and a half, and I really thank you for your time. It was a wonderful conversation. And
yeah, it was great. Thank you for having me.